So today's Tuesday,
Yom Shlishi.
second day of Channukah, Kafvav Kislev, 4th of December. This is the third installment of the Maimer Mika Shem Elokeinu Makvi L'Shabbat. Okay. So let's see what he says. So we're on. It says page 76 in the book, and it's folio 38C. Just a word about what the word folio means. I thought maybe you don't know what it means. Folio means a leaf. That's basically what they say, foliage. Comes from the same word. And it used to be that books were known by the number of leaves that they had instead of pages. And the leaf was really both sides of it was a full page, both sides of it. So sometimes, like in our book, when each page was just divided into two columns, so they used 4 letters to designate the columns. So in our case, it's folio 38, and it's the third column from the beginning. There's 2 columns on the other side and 2 columns on this side, so we call it 38C. In modern books, so you just use page numbers, and so there's no ambivalence, and people know what it means. But anyway, it doesn't matter. This is still what it says, whether you call it folio or page or whatever else. Okay. So we said that yesterday we began to outline how the relationship between the divine soul and the animal soul is beginning to look like a candle. That the divine soul is the fire that consumes. It's love like fire that a person connects to Hashem, and he understands Hashem through Torah. He's lit, his soul is lit with fire. And fire is something goes from below to above. It's an ascending action, it's an ascending feeling. So when a person says, I'm on fire, what he really means is, I'm going up. I feel like I'm going up. That's the feeling that the divine soul receives when it understands something from the Torah. But because of that, because it's fire that consumes, it needs to hold on to something. So it needs a wick and it needs fuel. So the fuel becomes the animal soul. And the wick that intermediates between them, that mediates between the consuming fire and the fuel, which will keep the fire going instead of having it run out immediately, is what we call the intellectual soul. We said that there are actually 2 intellectual souls. There's one intellectual soul that belongs to the divine soul, and there's another intellectual soul that belongs to the animal soul. And when a person learns Torah, the whole point is, if he wants to be able to mobilize the animal soul and make it useful for performing as fuel, make it useful as fuel, he needs to explain to the animal soul, through the intellectual soul, why this is something that's important to commit to. And so that's how the intellectual soul serves as an intermediate between the fire, the consuming fire of the divine soul, and the animal soul, which is normally, naturally bent on sustaining a person's survival. And it's not interested in committing to things that would harm its survival. Okay, so that's basically what we saw yesterday. So let's see. So I'm going 9 lines from the top, 76. So when a person is able to understand through Torah these things in his mind, meaning in his intellectual soul, he's able to understand what the Torah is telling him, he's able to understand how Hashem is everything. And again, it's through the Torah, only through the Torah can a person understand this. So the intellectual soul of the divine soul overpowers the intellectual soul of the animal soul. And it cancels out or nullifies the previous understanding that the animal soul had. It doesn't mean that this understanding is thrown out. The animal soul will always return to it. But at the moment when he's learning Torah, he feels that what he's understood from the Torah, this is the big school of Torah, that it has the ability to overcome the first understanding that a person has from his animal soul. בתקבורת הנפש האלוקית, המשכלת ומתבוננת בגדולת האינסוף ברוך הוא, להוליד מורח מינתה והתבוננותה, אהבה עזה כריש ואש, לדבקה בו יתברך והדבקה בחשוקה וחפיצה בהתלהבות עצומה. So this yearning love for Hashem, this love like fire, when it translates into the divine soul's intellectual soul, it becomes a yearning also that can overcome the first understanding of the animal soul. And then the person feels, even in his animal soul, he feels a certain want to cling to God. Ad klot nefesh, even to the point of surrendering his very self. As it says, my soul yearns, and it even wants to be consumed. And here it's talking specifically about the divine soul, but it also translates into the animal soul. And then it says, "V'imcha lo chafatzti ba'aretz, chala she'eriv levavi." And then it says that with you I don't want anything on earth, meaning it wants only God. Chala she'eriv, my flesh and my heart are consumed. And that's already talking about the animal soul, because the animal soul is connected to the flesh, it's connected to the heart, to the initial emotions of the heart. ואזי תהיה החוכמה שבנפש החיונית כשמן הנמשך אחר הפתילה. Now he calls in Tanya, there's, in general, in Torah, there's a lot of names for each one of the souls. So sometimes the animal soul is called the life force. Life force in Hebrew is like nefesh chiyunit. It's the soul that gives life to the body itself. So the wisdom that we gain through the Torah becomes, or translates into the as if it's oil. As if it's oil. It like was hard oil, it was something hard before, and it liquefies it. And now that it's oil, it's able to be the fuel for the wick, for the fire, for the wick and the fire that of the divine soul. So this is a picture of what happens every time that we learn Torah. The Torah liquefies the word. It makes the animal soul to something that's ready to commit itself, to give itself over to burning for the fire. So it's willing to become fuel. And this can only happen when a person is meditating through the Torah on Hashem being Ein Sof, being the truly eternal, the truly infinite, and truly beyond everything that we have in this world. I was speaking to somebody yesterday, and one of the things that came up was, how do you explain to somebody who doesn't have a religious language? How do you explain to them in a way that they can accept it, that the soul is eternal, that you have a part of you that's looking for something eternal? So one of the interesting things that came up was that this is something I picked up a long time ago from William James, and I think it's true, that the soul is a word that, at least in English, has no meaning. It's sort of a placeholder. You use the word to designate something, but it's not sure that you know exactly what you're talking about. The same thing with God. You say God, and you don't know exactly what you're talking about. And Yiddishkeit, Judaism, is the only religion that makes it its foundation that you cannot define these two things. You can't define Hashem because Hashem is undefinable. The moment you make him definable, then you've lost your then really it's not anything beyond. It's just not saying there's also the aspect of Hashem that's his immanent aspect. When you serve Hashem, when you really are davening, you don't daven to the immanent aspect. You don't daven to a force. You don't daven to the force of life inside of you. That's also Hashem. Of course it's Hashem, but you can't do that. You always daven to what is beyond all your understanding, to what is truly eternal. And we have like this understanding that what I can understand in my mind, even when it comes to Torah, is not completely eternal. There's something about how Hashem sees things and how he is that is always beyond my grasp, always beyond. And that's why we're so sensitive to avodah zarah, to idolatry, it's called. And idolatry doesn't really mean putting a piece of clay in front of you. It means that you're holding on to some image that God is so and so. The only image that was permitted, it's very interesting, even in the mind there's one image that's permitted. And it's by, it's like, sort of like you have to give people something. But it was accepted, this is an image that that was okay. This is the image that people saw at giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. What was the image? Niglalem kezaken ve'vatik. That Hashem revealed himself in the heart and the imagination to be like an old man, an old white-bearded man with white hair. And so that's accepted as like when you daven, in a certain sense you can't completely escape this image. It's been like ingrained in us. But if you can escape it, it's even better. If you can put that aside. Everybody was born, who was raised in a frum family, has this image in his head. I don't think you can take it out. What? What do you mean?
Before you said this, I've never even heard of this.
I said everybody was born in a frum family. Right. Like where he went to Cheder or whatever, he has this image in his head. He can't, I don't think he can get it out. I think it comes from when you learn Matan Torah, and everybody learns that Rashi. And it's usually at a very young age, you're 6 or 7 years old. And Rashi is explicit there, and he mentions also that at the parting of the Red Sea, he appeared as a young man with black hair. But somehow that image doesn't stick. The image that sticks for everybody I know, is somehow the old bearded man. Said again, it's just like some kind of placeholder. You don't daven to that, but it's like something comes up. So I think Baal Shem Tov was once asked if you have to fight this image, and he said no, it's fine. Because Rashi says you can live with this image, but of course if you can daven to what's beyond even that image, it's even much better. Certainly not davening to this image, not praying to it or anything. It comes up because it's so ingrained in us. In any case, so the soul and the Shem are always undefinable. So the easiest way to define it to somebody who doesn't have a religious sensibility about it is that it's what's eternal is actually what is beyond all your understanding, beyond all that you can grasp, all that you can sense, either in your mind or in your body. Whatever, all these things are fleeting. And the way Hashem really is always beyond all of this. And then the love of God that came out of the Hisbonenus, remember the Hisbonenus, the meditation on Hashem being Ein Sof, started from Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That's where you do it every day. And right after that, it promises you V'ahavta, meaning that your animal soul, your life force will liquefy, become fat, shemen, and that's why we eat sufganiyot clearly. There's no question. It's a symbol. The whole thing with oil is a symbol of turning the fat of the world into something that serves God. That's what the menorah did. And the menorah is always a menorah in which the menorah was lit by olive oil, of course. So it was always a symbol of wisdom, the olive oil. So what's burning there is the wisdom of the infinite, meaning wisdom of sensing Hashem as being beyond. So when we eat food that's oily food, better in olive oil, but any oil will burn, it's like a symbol that it's okay, because on Channukah we're committing to mitzvot. And we're saying it's okay for a Jew it's okay for a person in general to have physical matter. I'll say something about this in a moment. It's okay for us to have physical needs, because the point of the physical needs is to transform them into something that burns in order to perform mitzvot, in order to... The mitzvot are like a vehicle of appreciating that Hashem is beyond everything that we understand. Because again, the mitzvot are beyond tam v'dat, they're beyond beyond reason. That's exactly why the Greeks were so against the mitzvot and not so against the Torah. The Rebbe, when he used to sign a letter A lot of times he would send a person blessings b'gashmiut v'ruchaniut, in material and spiritual things. If he was writing to a non-Jew, how would he sign? He would sign it the opposite. He would say spiritual and material. He would reverse the order. This is a very interesting thing, that by a Jew, the ikar is, and it's okay, that he be blessed in a lot of material wealth because he knows how to transform it into spirituality. So you can say material first. But by non-Jew, because he doesn't have Torah, he doesn't have mitzvot, or he has less of them, the material wealth will get in his way. So you don't bless him first with the material. You also bless him with material, nothing against it. But tell him that the main thing is the spiritual. And you have to work, first of all, on gaining ways to transform the material you already have into something spiritual. Okay. So now we come to, so that's V'ahavta b'chol levavcha, and it comes in both your hearts, meaning in both your, what we used to be called inclinations, but now we're calling them the divine soul and the animal soul. And through the first part of Tanya up to chapter 27, everything that he talks about is how the heart is split into two, and both the divine soul and the animal soul dwell there. So b'chol levavcha means that both sides of the heart are now participating in the mitzvah, in connecting to Hashem. And the way that the animal soul burns will be greater. Why? Because because it's now liquefied, it's turned into oil. And when it burns, it's consumed completely. Right? If it was just fire, like we said, the fire would go out quickly. So the divine soul by itself doesn't have a lot of hold on this world. That's why a person feels every day that its divine soul is something that neshama, when we say the bracha in the morning, we don't mean about the animal soul. Because the animal soul at some level is constant. And even when a person's asleep, a part of it is still here. And still holding on to make sure that the person doesn't die. Bodily functions continue and so on. A different way maybe, but they continue. When I wake up in the morning, what's put into me, neshama shenatatabi, that I'm talking about the divine soul. And Hashem has to reintroduce it every single day because it's something, by definition, it always has a feeling of freshness. Like the Baal Shem Tov said, my name is Yisrael because I'm like the charm that you say a person's name to wake him up. And I'm the name of the Jewish people, Yisrael, to wake them up from their slumber. Meaning he's like the general Nefesh Elokit, he's the general divine soul of the entire Jewish people. All the oil, the entire animal soul is transformed into fire. Now, I don't want to bring gruesome images, but it's just a way to understand this very easily. That before there was oil in the world, like oil from the Middle East and Venezuela and Russia, the black stuff, the black gold. So what did they use to light their homes? So they used something called kerosene. And what was kerosene made out of? You can make it out of a lot of things. So I'm not sure if kerosene is the right word. Maybe I have the wrong word.
It is kerosene.
No, I'm thinking that kerosene is an earlier form of black
It's
oil.
It's coal. It's a coal derivative.
Okay, so the best oil in the world, which was why we hardly have any of them left over, was whale oil.
Yeah.
And mamish, they would capture whales
The Japanese ate them all.
just for the oil. It burnt the best. It was because what was it? A whale is like 95% fat. Blubber. And if you ever seen it, mamish, they would go into the whale. It was like they were digging inside the earth and bringing the buckets up of blubber, and that would be turned into. And apparently, it didn't smell so bad. It only smelled bad when we were there, and it was the best type of oil, and it burned beautifully. Okay. In Eretz Yisrael, in any case, there were no whales, so they had to
Improvise.
make it from olive oil.
They were during the time of the flood.
It's also Yonah somehow found one in the Mediterranean or something like that. עד שנשא ממנו כולו אש של אור הנר על ידי בחינת צעק ליבם. It says really the feeling here is like the feeling of what we call the lower waters, yearning and crying out, we also want to be before Hashem. So the animal soul, its redemption is to be burnt up. That's what it's waiting for. A person who doesn't engage in burning his animal soul up and using it to perform mitzvot and to learn Torah, so he's depriving it of its main reason for existence. It's true that initially the animal soul doesn't know this. It thinks its only cause for being here is to help the person survive. But once you learn and the intellectual soul is strengthened, and a person understands what it means that there is something beyond all his knowledge, he begins to understand what it means that there's Or Ein Sof, that there's infinite light in the Torah. It's all connecting to Hashem. So the animal soul is woken up by its burning, by its desire to connect with this place, to rise there. And the only way it can rise there is by burning his oil. Meaning there's no other way. You can't do it. It's like burning calories. So people go out and they run. It's very nice. It's very good. But that's not the real thing that the animal soul is yelling for. And they mistake it in a certain sense. They mistake that. Say it this way. I'm not telling people not to go jog. Go jog if you want. But when the doctor tells you you need to do exercise because you have too many lipids, you have too much this, too much that, cholesterol, whatever it is. So that's just an external message that the animal soul is saying, I'm too fat. What do you do with my fat? So he says, go burn it by exercising. It's one possibility. The deeper possibility is they have to go burn it. It's yelling out to you. It's sending you to the doctor because it's yelling out. That's what he says. Tza'ak liban b'kirvam. That the heart is crying out, I want to be before Hashem. I want to be burnt. So people understand it. I just want to be burnt by exercise. Burning calories is also very nice. But the real thing that I want to be doing is I want to be doing mitzvot. And the mitzvot is what's going to burn me properly. That's the real thing. And that is the transformation that it goes through and makes it yearn to become oil for burning. This is how the soul in its entirety becomes a candle. And it starts from the meditation of the divine soul. Now, interestingly, what he just described is how the soul is like a mitzvah, is like a candle. Now he has to describe how the mitzvah itself is also a candle. And we said that they have to fit because basically the mitzvah is going to enclose the soul. So I can't make a shirt with 3 arms because I don't have 3 arms. I can't make it with 1 arm because I have 2 arms. So I have to make something that fits. The clothing has to fit the person. So if the mitzvah is clothing for the soul, so they have to be the same shape. So it also has to, again, symbolically act like a candle. So how does that work? את נפש הבהמית ולקשרה באור אינסוף ברוך הוא, כמאמר אשר קידשנו במצוותיו בקודש העליון שהוא למעלה מן ההשתלשלות. So as I've been explaining it, I've been introducing the concept of mitzvah as a candle throughout. But really, until now, he hasn't mentioned the concept of mitzvah. All he said is that by learning Torah, by meditating on Hashem being in Sof, the person comes to a yearning in his heart, and the yearning itself is what burns, what consumes the animal soul in his heart. Now he's saying that the mitzvah is a special segula. Mitzvah, each mitzvah is like a particular and unique charm. Segula basically means charm or action at a distance. It means that you don't know how it works. You have no real explanation for it. In order to raise, to elevate the animal soul and to connect it to the divine light, to the infinite light above. It's like we say, every time we do a mitzvah, we say a bracha, a blessing, and the blessing is Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvotav. that Hashem sanctifies us with these mitzvot. What does it mean He sanctifies us? And sanctification means you connect to the holy above. What's the holy? B'kodesh ha'elyon, shu lemala min ishtalshalut. People say He's a holy man. If He was a holy man, He wouldn't be here. Holy, there's three words: Kodesh, Kadosh, and Kedusha. Each one has an additional letter. Kodesh is just Kuf Dalet Shin. And then Kadosh is Kuf Dalet Vav Shin. You add a Vav. And Kedusha is that you add the Hey at the end. So basically you have the word, you add a Vav, you add a Hey. And so you can right away understand that because the Vav and the Hey are the two lower parts of Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. So this means that as you descend from Kodesh into Kadosh, into Kedusha, you're coming lower and lower into reality. Kodesh, says the Zohar, Milah Begalme, is something unto itself. It's always divorced from everything that you can describe.
So when they call him Shekel Shalom, Kedusha?
Everybody says.
No.
Kedushato shel Aaron. Aaron had a special type of Kedusha. But it's a lower Kedusha. It's not that I'm...
The mitzvah.
Kiddushanu. So the Kedusha shel mitzvot. But it's not even being a Kadosh yet. Kadosh is somebody who extracted himself to some extent from the world. But if he was really holy, he wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
The Kodesh itself has no grasp in this world. It can't be fully grasped in this world. That's Kodesh, the noun. Then there's Kadosh, which is with an adjective. It's like an adjective. So Kadosh means he is holy. If you were totally holy, like the noun itself, you wouldn't be here. But it's an adjective. Then Kedusha is another type of noun. I don't remember what it's called in English. How you do it in what it's called in grammar. But it's basically when you take a verb and you turn it into a noun. I think it's called a gerund. I don't remember what it's called.
That's not right.
I don't remember what it's called. So you took the kadosh and you turned it into a noun. So it's lower even than the initial noun was out of this world. It was like divorced from all reality. And kodesh really means it's something that's outside of our frame of reference. Hashem's holiness is outside our frame of reference. So that's a real kodesh. When we say kichanu b'mitzvotav, that He makes us holy with His mitzvot, meaning that He gives us some part of that holiness that can be grasped in the world, and that we receive through the mitzvot. What does it mean? It means again that the animal soul is now going to become a little bit holy. It's going to grab something of that holiness. How does it do it? כי המצוות הן לבושים, ונקראים לבוש מלכות, שהם בחינת מקיפים. So the mitzvos, they're described elsewhere as garments, and they're called the garments of the king, levush malchut, like a royal garment, because they are surrounding and enclothing the nefesh, the soul, from its head until its foot, and connecting it, liot tzrura b'tzror chaim, and connecting it with the source of all life, with Hashem, mamish, with Hashem Himself. But it's a garment, as we explained it in the Tanya, that a garment is like that if you hold on to the garment, meaning if you hug the garment, you're hugging what's inside. So even though you can't approach what's inside because it's kodesh, because it's something that cannot be grasped by the human intellect, it cannot be grasped by our actions, but still these actions, they are in the shape, as it were, you're going through the motions, that inside these motions, these special motions, Hashem is dwelling. It's like Hashem is there.
So you're touching the garment.
So you're holding onto the garment, by holding onto, or even wearing the garment. It even means that you're wearing the garment. Wearing the garment. If we weren't Jewish, so we would say, they don't say this. I don't know why they don't say this. But, and it's made up, I think, but it's an interesting idea, that there are certain exercises, motions that you do, that they're like the motions that Hashem dwells inside. Whenever, I'll give an example. A lot of some of our mitzvot are to say something. It's mitzvah. So you daven, it's mitzvah. So apart from the action that you do understand, you also hold that the Siddur has a certain wording that is a school, special. That we don't change the way that we say the Amida, the way that the Sheikh Mr. Buddha decided on the wording. It's pretty much been kept throughout the generations. Why? Because we have an understanding that when I speak, it's these words specifically, Hashem is inside these words. It's like emotions that I'm going through that if I wasn't Jewish, what would I say? You have a spell book. In the spell book it says, say this. And when you say this, such and such will happen.
Yeah, that's the Tukki of the...
Just like you complete the void desire.
It's not about desire, it's just stupid. But the concept is correct. Meaning the people just made up some mumbo jumbo. But the concept is still the same concept. Or there's some things we don't have so much of this now because Yiddishkeit is not very ritualistic. There's only one thing that we're ritualistic in, and everybody connects to it
Eating.
because of that. What?
Eating.
The thing that we're most ritualistic about is the Arba meaning, the four species and the sukkahs, and that's why when you go out to do Iftarullah, when you offer your lulav to people, you get back a broken broom. Because how did people, like on the street, shake it like it's some kind of, what does it remind you? And it's missing, in a certain sense, it's missing. Because Yiddishkeit is very cerebral. So most of the time when we do a mitzvah, it's either we're eating or we're learning. So one of the two things. So it has to do with the head all the time. But to do something with your hands, by the way, that's why Mitzvah Tefillin is so popular in the end.
Oh yeah?
I think because you're doing something physical. There's not very many physical things in Yiddishkeit.
Cleaning for Pesach,
But
building the
that's
sukkah.
only because we don't have the base of English.
Right.
The base of English, everything was physical. From beginning to end. Every single thing was an expression of the body. There was very little that a person didn't do with his body. And everything was always going back to the body and looking at the body. And is it whole? Is it not whole? Does it have this blemish, that blemish? The animals, the people, everything there is very, very physical. The whole base of English is a physical enactment of connecting to God. So the reason we're not very keen on the physical is simply because we have a feeling like that we would ruin it. Without the base of Mikdash, it'll be ruined in some way. But in the base of Mikdash, there is this thing called Nufa. Nufa means that when you bring the korban, certain types of korban, you have to raise them and lower them. Basically, you're doing the same thing that you do with the lulav. And it goes to all four directions. And this, I'm sure that everybody would connect to right away. It doesn't only have to be an animal. Nufa, there's some nufot with certain types of meal offerings also.
Come with the Kohanim.
And you're going to have to lift all this stuff.
Aaron Kohen lifted up all the Kohanim.
With
With their offerings.
with the offerings at the same time. So,
I'm going to go down.
me too.
You doubling here?
Yeah, take some
Come
time.
over there.
What's over there?
In the Cairo.
Ah.
Chabad Minyan. Chris will tell us Shkita Slavovich. 5 minutes.
So just as to mention that there are all kinds of systems in the world that all these Jews connect to because they're so physical. So they call them Tai Chi or they call them this and that. In the end, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get the whole body involved in some kind of ritual. And then the person feels, oh, Hashem appeared to me. Something special appeared to me. Just to know that these things are made up. I don't think they work in any way. They might be good for exercise, but not beyond that. But they're so steep with the so steep with the concepts. Because what are they doing? They're not moving for the sake of exercise. They're moving because they believe these rituals awaken a certain idol. Again, a certain
The
part of the
Rambam
Shem.
writes that the whole thing in the ring, the Korbanos in the base of Mikdash was to wean the people off the Void Desire.
Right. Because we need that. We need this movement. We need this feeling that we're doing something with our bodies. This is why it's so important not to do these things like, I don't even say the name. Tai Chi is basically not a Avodah Zarah word. The other one is Mamish an Avodah Zarah.
Yeah.
We don't need Void Desire anymore. We have money.
Okay, so I think we'll end it here.